Hello, I'm Scott Harris, host of Naturally Scott. Happy to have you with us here today, and you are in for a bit of a treat. When you think of chestnuts, if you think of them roasting over an open fire, the old Nat King Cole song written in 1945 by Mel Torme and Robert Wells, it's called the Christmas song. And for most of us, that's about as much as we know about chestnuts, or at least it is for me. But today you're going to learn a lot more about them. You're going to meet Michael Goergen. He's the president and CEO, brand new president and CEO of the American Chestnut Foundation. And we're going to talk about a number of things. But when Europeans first came over to this country, the eastern seaboard was covered with chestnuts. Roughly a third of our forest was chestnuts. The Indians, the indigenous tribes that were here before that, many of them considered that a spiritual thing. They're extremely important to the habitat as far as providing food for people, the actual chestnuts, and then providing habitat for a number of the animals that the indigenous tribes and later on the Europeans, when we came here, would harvest for food. Those were hit by a blight over a century ago, almost completely wiped out, just destroyed. 99.99% of them were destroyed. And the American Chestnut Foundation is doing what they can to bring these back. And Michael's going to tell you why that's important, how that's going to benefit you and the entire eastern seaboard, and what they're doing to make that happen. So go ahead, jump right into the podcast. Let's meet Michael. Let's talk chestnuts. And since the holiday season's coming up, maybe sing a little bit about an open fire. All right, have a great day. Thanks for joining us. Hello and welcome to this edition of Naturally Scott. I'm Scott Harris, your host, and today I've got Michael Goergen with me as my guest, and I am really fascinated to talk to Michael about what he's doing and what he's trying to accomplish. And actually, Michael was suggested to me by my son, Justin, who loves to study all things, and he came to me and said, Dad, I found this organization that's trying to save the chestnuts, and you've got to talk to this guy and get him on the show. So a little nod there to my son on that one. And I have to throw this out. Michael and I spoke about it very briefly before the episode started. Goergen is the way that you pronounce his last name. And we just dropped a podcast today by a woman named Susie, and her last name is spelled S-P-I-K-O-L. But it's pronounced Spickle, pickle with an S. And so I seem to have a theme going there. Michael, I'm going to have to introduce you to Susie because I think she said her nickname as a child was Sweet Gherkin.
That's great.
And you guys may have some stories to share about your childhood.
Absolutely.
So
actually, I went to forestry school at SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry. Scott, I forgot that. And we had a green painted school bus that would take us to field trips, and all the kids at Syracuse used to make fun of us and call it the pickle bus. So there we go. There's a theme.
There is a theme, and I happen to I saw something the other day. I'd never seen it before, but a woman had taken, the little vegetable trays at the bottom of your refrigerator that slide out. She had taken one of them and made it strictly for pickles.
Sure.
There was pickle juice in there, and not in jars or anything. It was actually pickle juice and pickles. She would just slide that open, grab a pickle, and eat it. Now, I enjoy pickles, and I eat a few, but I don't think I need to establish an entire drawer. But that being the case, let's shift to chestnuts.
Absolutely.
So, Michael, you are president and CEO of the American Chestnut Foundation. And we are going to get into your background, your schooling, your childhood, and all those things at some point over the course of this conversation. And I'm looking forward to that. But first, tell us the story of the American chestnut. Why is it interesting? Why is it important? Why do we care?
Yeah, the chestnut is an incredibly important story for America in so many ways, Scott, because, before 1900, this tree made up about a quarter of the entire forest from Georgia all the way to Maine. Incredibly important species for all sorts of different reasons. In Appalachia, they called it a cradle to grave species because, you would make your cradle from it, but you could also make your coffin from it in terms of the wood use of it. But it would feed you throughout the year. It fed animals that you relied on. Incredibly important species for people, for wildlife. It's one of the few mast trees that produces a large mast every year. And unlike the Chinese chestnut or the Japanese chestnut that were really bred for orchards and for, the production of those chestnuts as a food crop. The wild American chestnuts were really important because they would compete in the forest. They were tall. We had these wood properties that we got from them as well. So it was just an incredibly important resource across the entire width of Appalachia. And that's not even talking about, for example, the importance to our Native American communities. I grew up in Western New York State, right next to the Seneca Nation of Indians of the Haudenosaunee tribe. And they really felt that the chestnut was kin to them, a relative, because it was so important to their life. It provided food that was critical throughout all of the winter, but again, feeding the wildlife that they really relied on. If you think of the black bear, for example, the decline in the black bear is also tied to the decline in chestnut. So just an incredibly important species in our native forest. And, trying to bring it back has been an incredible process because the government hasn't been able to do it. It's been incredibly challenging for us. And citizen scientists have been out funding this organization, volunteering for this organization, making progress on producing a better tree by hope. And it's absolutely fantastic to be part of this organization and trying to make a difference in getting this tree back on the landscape.
Well, that is fantastic. And I have to tell you, I just interviewed earlier this week the podcast. Well, it'll be up by the time our podcast is up. A gentleman named Steve Metz. I don't know if you've met Steve or heard of him.
No.
Steve is your counterpart. He is president and CEO of Save the Redwoods League.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
actually, I'm going to introduce you to Steve for reasons more important than the pickle relationship with Susie, but I'm going to introduce you to both. But Steve is doing the same thing on the West Coast that you're doing on the East Coast. He's trying to save the redwoods because of the importance that they play to all of us. He's working with the indigenous tribes. It sounds like it very much parallels what you're trying to do with the chestnuts. We've lost 95% of our redwood forests, and the redwoods are the single greatest carbon bank in the world, acre for acre, just because of their massive size, of course. But
can I tell you, Scott, the
absolutely.
redwood is incredibly important to me. My wife I'm a forester by training, and my wife is a forest engineer by training. And when we were married, she's from Spain originally. And so right after we were married, it wasn't quite our honeymoon, but when we came back to the United States, I took her to the redwoods right away because as a forester, she just had to see the redwoods. So I will look forward to that connection and conversation because that's absolutely right. We've lost so much of that species. We need a more programmatic approach, a forest health bank where we're really taking care of these trees long term, because if this is not just a chestnut story, that's the saddest thing about it. The chestnut's incredibly important because to me, Scott, it really represents America because it's such an enduring species. Even though it's functionally extinct, the roots are still surviving. You can go out into the forest today and there are still trees on the landscape. You can find them. There are still roots that are throwing up sprouts every year, trying to get above the canopy and trying to survive. It just keeps trying to reproduce and trying to sustain itself on the landscape. And it's just this incredible story of an endurance. And I think that it's a wonderful story of what nature can provide with human intervention and help. And I mean, I think about how hard these challenges are. Trees are really hard, Scott. I mean, we're talking about, 7 to 10 years before we even get pollen from them, before we can start, the second part of our breeding cycle. It's just incredibly challenging in terms of length. But have you ever eaten a wild banana?
Yes.
You
Yes,
have?
I have,
Okay.
as a matter of fact.
Get the seeds and everything in it, right? I mean, it's mostly seed. It's not a great food. But, humans over time produce this incredible seedless banana that, we've been able to genetically clone and put all over the earth. And it took thousands of years to do. Corn is the same thing. It was this grass plant in Mexico that we're able to produce into the most incredibly producing grain that's, ever been on the planet. And so, time, nature and human beings can really cooperate to generate incredible successes. And so that's what I'm really excited about for the future with things like chestnut, with the work that your friend is doing with the redwoods, that others are doing with the ash. You may have heard of emerald ash borer and the challenges we're facing with that species. And so organizations like the Nature Conservancy and others are working on trying to bring back the emerald or to bring back the ash in a stronger way. There are efforts But we also have things to all learn from each other too, because there's a lot of work that's going on in terms of the science that we're learning from. And this is what's really exciting about the American Chestnut Foundation is because we've been working on chestnut for so long, we have really terrific information about our breeding program. And so we can really dig in and understand from a genetic standpoint and predict and understand what success is going to look like in the field before we plant the tree. It's part of a genetic process that we've used for a long time in forestry. Some of the greatest success for this has been done with loblolly pine in the southeast United States. And so work that was really started at North Carolina State University, where they've really, I mean, just they've done all kinds of things to improve loblolly pine as a primarily as a commercial timber species. But when you look at it, they've produced a 50% volume increase on the same acreages with that
Mhm.
tree in less than 50 years. I mean, just
Yeah, it is.
it's incredible.
It really is incredible. And one of the things that I'm starting, so a couple things have happened. This podcast is relatively new. You're about the 34th or 35th guest that
Wow.
we've had.
Thank you.
And one of the things when I started, it was a lot of birders. I wrote a book called Why We Love Birds. I wrote a book called Raptor Quest, where I did a big year looking for raptors. And those were the people that I had met and known and got on the show. But then through that, I mean, when we're done with this, I'll ask you who else you might recommend that I talk to. What I've come to realize that a lot of this show is about conservation efforts and how critical they are. And one of the things that has really become clear to me, and again, I've got to give kudos to my son because he pointed it out. We hear all the time about climate change and how things are, the redwoods are going away and the grizzlies are going away and the wolves are, and the chestnuts. But we have so many success stories and we just seem to shy away from the success stories. And I think it's a real danger in the conservation community that somehow they feel like if they acknowledge that there's a couple of wins, then maybe people won't take the losses as seriously. And I actually think it's the opposite. I think when you pound the common layman over the head time and time again, that we're all going to die in 100 years anyway in an overheated, climate changed world, and we can't save anything, and the birds are dying, and the fish are dying, and the chestnuts are dead. And well, after a while, you just go, shit, I don't care anymore. There's nothing, I never ate chestnuts anyway. I'd never hunted a black bear. I've not made it out to the redwoods. I'm doing okay. And I think it's discouraging, but if we start to share these successes, that there are organizations out there doing this, and that, to your point earlier, this is something that this needs to be done in private and public relationships and nonprofits and working with indigenous tribes and bringing all these things together. We can't rely on the government, state or federal, to fix these problems. And I'm quite excited as I talk to all these different organizations and the people running these groups. I'm really far more optimistic than I was when I started this show. I'm just hearing about good people doing good things and making headway. Some of it's a little easier than others. I mean, you're talking about a 7 to 10 year thing. When you meet Steve, he's going to talk to you about 100, 200, and 3 year cycles, to get the old growth redwoods going.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, some of the land that they're working with the indigenous tribes, they've dug up creeks that haven't been active creeks in well over 100 years, but they could, you can tell where the creek beds are. They back home out. They come back and become creeks again. And 6 months later, there's fish.
We've got salmon coming back on the Klamath in Oregon. I mean,
Yeah,
that's incredible.
it
They're
really
back 1
is.
year and they came back.
I mean, nature desperately wants to succeed.
It does.
Right. And we screwed it up in a lot of ways. And I'm not a all humans are bad and everything we do is terrible person, but we have made some mistakes. But we can also correct those mistakes.
Well, I think, what you're talking about, I think is so fundamentally important because, it comes down to, it's very easy to give up. It's very easy to give in to fear. I mean, I don't want to get too philosophical on you, Scott, but,
No, go ahead.
it's like every single choice seems to come down to either fear or love. You can choose one or the other, right? And if if you always choose fear, it's easier.
Yes.
But if we start looking at hope and opportunity and those kinds of things, we can start to see the light. And that's kind of the way that that I look at chestnut. It's so funny. I talked about Mila with the redwoods and taking her out there. The first time that I've seen chestnut in the wild a couple of times in terms of finding a sprout and being moved by seeing a tree that's like about this big around and a couple of leaves on it. I'm like, oh my God, it's a chestnut sprout, and trying to find the stump and just
The
going crazy
world
over
is
it, right?
saved.
But when I first took this position, Bruce Levine, who was the acting CEO and is the chair of the Maryland chapter or the vice chair of the Maryland chapter of the American Chestnut Foundation, he took me out to one of our chestnut groves that's nearby. I mean, about 40 minutes away from my home. Didn't know it was there. Unlocked the gate, and we walked into just this. I mean, it was magic. I mean, I've just never been inside of it before. As a forester, right? I mean, I've seen pictures, I understand how to identify it. I know what it's supposed to look like. But to be surrounded by a species that's functionally extinct, to see a complete canopy of chestnut trees with burrs and remnant candles that are still there, I just absolutely incredible experience. And I'm so proud of the people that have made this happen, because they've been at it for years. I mean, this is the thing. Think about the hope that this takes. This is so hard. They've seen failure after failure after failure, because so many times we'll plant 20, 30 trees and 10% of them will work out. That takes a lot of hope to go back there and plant 10 more the next year.
And perseverance. And,
Yeah.
To your point about choosing hope or fear, when I think about human beings, it's like you can choose to trust everybody you meet, or you can choose to not trust anybody.
Yep.
And if you're an idiot, you won't make adjustments. I mean, you trust everybody. I choose to trust everybody to start, but not everybody.
Verify, like Reagan said, right?
That's right. Trust but verify, which is a great philosophy, by the way. It's a great way to start. So take me back. I want to
talk
talk
a lot of Ronald Reagan praise lately, Scott. I don't know what's going on. It's been an interesting time, isn't it?
It is a wild world right now. And, when I lived in California, we retired to South Carolina about 5 years ago. And I'd spent my whole life in South Carolina. In Southern California. And I was very involved in politics. I had a political syndicated column. I had 2 radio shows every week. I had a TV show.
Where were you based?
Ventura County.
Oh, super. Okay. Yeah, I have family all over Southern California, mostly Orange County, Riverside, that area.
Oh, yeah. And I was very involved. Local and state and national. And I loved it. And I was an advocate and, da-da-da-da-da. And when I was leaving Southern California to come here, my friends were like, my God, you're going to miss all this. You've got all the connections. I said, I don't think I am. I think I've paid my dues. I think I'm good now. And I got out here, and I have to tell you, I have steered clear of it, and I don't miss it. I think it's important. I'm glad other people have picked up the baton, but I was really comfortable passing that baton off. And so I've had some guests.
There is solace in hearing a red-shouldered hawk in the forest. They're not.
I'm not convinced, by the way, that isn't the most magnificent sound I've ever heard in all of nature.
Have you noticed that it's in every TV show?
Yes.
The call of a red-tailed hawk is substituted for every raptor in every movie.
It's part of my ongoing, I do a lecture series for the book Raptor Quest that I wrote. And that is one of the things that I talk about is that the red-tailed, the only thing that I've heard that is in the same level is a lion's roar on the Serengeti.
Wow. I've not heard it, but wow.
Oh my God. I got to tell you, if people ask me, other than, babies crying or laughing and, the human sounds, but sounds that are generated from nature, red-tailed hawk giving that warrior's cry, and a lion saying, I don't give a shit about anything or anybody. I am out here. You bring what you want to bring whoever you want to bring. I am good to go. I will kill and eat what I want to kill and eat. I will defend my family, and that's it. So you look at
I will send you, just as a just for fun for you, I write some fiction as well, and I wrote this really funny thing in a book about a person bring, you know how they'll always bring a bald eagle to a meeting to show you nature, and it's always they're usually a recovery bird or whatever. And have you ever heard a bald eagle squawk?
If you haven't heard
Not
that,
elegant.
no. First of all, it sounds like something the eagle should be hunting, not that should be emitted from the eagle. And the only thing I can think of is Mike Tyson. Here you have the baddest ass human being in the history of the world, and he opens up his mouth, and it's Pippi Longstocking with this squeaky high pitch. And I'm thinking, well, no wonder people aren't afraid of him when they get in the ring. Now, one punch later, their world changes. But how can you be afraid of that squeaky thing? And yet, that's how I.
Bald eagle is the Mike Tyson of the bird world. I love it. It's great.
Nobody wants to mess. Have you held a bald eagle?
I have, yeah.
Well, so right? I mean, their pawn talons are bigger than your hand.
They're scary. I mean, scary.
They are massive, massive birds. So, like, I did raptor rescue for a number of years, and we used to wear falconry gloves to go pick up all the birds that we would pick up, right? And they were sick or injured, and often they were near death and didn't present any danger, but sometimes they had just been stunned by a car or something, and they were coming back. The two exceptions to those were bald eagles and great horned owls, because they would cut through a falconry glove like a hot knife.
I didn't know how the horned owl was that. Oh, wow.
I wore welder's gloves.
Yeah.
Because you go to pick up a bald eagle, and I got to tell you, Michael, since you've held one, I'll share this story. I get a call that I've got to go pick up a bald eagle that's been sick or injured, and fine, happy to do it. And I was Southern California, in the center I worked with was in North Carolina, and I was in South Carolina. So it was a multi-hour drive to do all this. So I drive out to this woman's house that had the bald eagle, and I knock on the door, and nice woman. And I say, okay, so where's the bald eagle? And usually the birds are under a laundry basket in the garage, right? That's where, people don't know what to do. And I understand that.
Great.
And she says to me, oh, the bird is in the bathroom, in our guest bathroom.
Oh, God.
Okay, that's a little surprising, but okay. So I go, and she goes, maybe you should open the door. I open the door to the guest bathroom, and it's a tiny little bathroom, right? It's one of those half baths. And I open the door, so no more than 4 feet in front of me is the wall, and between the door and the wall is the toilet. And sitting on the tank is the bald eagle, who is now fully recovered from whatever had stunned him, and is not happy about being in the bathroom, and is taller than I am standing on the toilet tank. And this woman says, you're going to need to get the eagle out of the bathroom. And I said, you're going to have to adjust to having an eagle in the bathroom. I'm going in there. Are you out of your... That's what I said to her. Can we get to the window from the outside? Because this bird is healthier than either of us. And I'm not really as enamored as you might think about going in there with a hungry, pissed off bald eagle. So eventually I have to go in there, and I'm able to get the bird. And we never even took the bird to the center because it was fine. It had just, it had been knocked and it had been stunned. And when I got it, it was fine. But my God, they are powerful animals.
They are. That's amazing.
They're just beautiful. Okay, let's back up.
You know what bird relied on the chestnut? The passenger pigeon.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
The passenger pigeon, along with the American bison, just shows there's nothing that we can't drive to extinction.
Well, it's really interesting too. At the same time the Bronx Zoo was trying to recover the American bison, the chestnut blight was just being discovered at the zoo. It's connected, Scott. It's
okay.
Really
well, you know this because you've studied it your whole life, but this is all connected. It's not a coincidence that within 5 minutes of meeting you, I already have 2 people that you need to meet. This is all interconnected. The chestnuts are not independent of anything.
And none of us are. I mean, we talked about this at the beginning. It's all community. The government needs to be part of this. Our universities need to be a part of this. And that's what's so exciting about the American Chestnut Foundation is we've brought together all these parts. So we've got some of the greatest scientists in America that understand genetics better than, trust me, better than I will ever possibly understand it. We've got terrific foresters who've been studying the tree for years and years. And we've got, I mean, Scott, we've got people who, I mean, unfortunately, I actually feel kind of bad for them. They tell me things like, there's not a day that goes by where I haven't talked about chestnuts. And I'm like, man, I don't even, we got to find a rest day for you somewhere in here. But I mean, our volunteers are that dedicated to trying to bring back this tree because they know what it could mean to people and they want it to be there for their, for their kids, their grandkids, that next generation. It's a dedication. I mean, it's one of the things that I love about being a forester is that essence of thinking about planting a tree and realizing that it's something that's going to outlive you and it's going to sustain people far beyond you. And it's always about people, Scott. It's always about people. Even if it's a wilderness area, it's about people. But at the end of the day,
It is.
being
And
part of a profession that's thinking that far ahead, boy, it's really exciting.
It is exciting. And, I love the idea. We bought this property 6 years ago now. We bought the property and there's a couple of houses on it. And out in the front between the guest house and the street, there's a pretty decent sized front yard that we're never going to use because we live on a lake. So everything is projected toward the back. But you had this beautiful area. And once again, it sounds like my son's show. Maybe he should be here instead of me. But when we first moved here, my son said, Dad, you know what we should plant in this large open grass area is a southern live oak. And so
Beautiful.
we went out and right in the center of this grass, we planted this southern live oak. So this would have been about 5 years ago that we planted it. It was shorter than me. It's already 20 feet tall.
Beautiful.
And it's starting to grow. And my son and I talk all the time about, because we're hoping to keep this in the family. So the grandkids and the great grandkids, family members that I'll never get to meet will hopefully one day be picnicking under this magnificent tree that we picked up. It was really just a good looking shrub, it was 5 feet tall. And all of a sudden now it's 20 feet tall and it's starting to spread. Actually, we're going out this winter when the grass dies away and cutting a much larger circle, taking the grass out from underneath it to get all the nutrients going into the tree. But that being said, and it sounds like you and I need to get
Scott, how many of us had a tree like that in our front yard that was the safe spot and tag or hide and seek or and it was so funny. I was just out with one of our donors, this really terrific, was a native mountain ash. And we had a mountain ash growing up in my front yard as a kid. It was the tree that was the central tree. And it just brought back all of those memories, who's not ready, holler I. I mean, it's just part of it, all of it.
You got to remember the first tree you fell out of.
Yeah.
As a Southern California boy, we were oaks.
Absolutely.
Oaks were our tree, and chestnuts are great and redwoods are great. And I support all of that, but I got to tell you, man, there was something about an oak tree.
Me too.
That is it just emits strength to me and power. And anyway, so I want to talk about the projects and what you're doing because you've touched on the science a little bit. But before we do, you mentioned that this was almost a spiritual tree for some of the indigenous tribes. Take me back and tell me what I saw as I was among the first Europeans that landed here. So the indigenous tribes were here, that this was a part of their life and their livelihood. And we came and saw these trees. Were there chestnut trees when I left Western Europe?
Yes, absolutely. There would have been European chestnut trees. So they would have been familiar with a version of a chestnuts.
Okay, so it wasn't a shockingly new tree to me.
No. But it would have been the form of it.
Is it valuable to me in Western Europe? Was it doing the same things that it did here?
And I should know this and I should look this up, Scott, but I believe they were eating the nuts for sure. So, there was certainly a culture around eating the nut and has been for a very long time. So to this day, when I go to Madrid with my wife, there's a gentleman who sells chestnuts on the streets of Madrid on the corner. Big part of the culture to this day. So they would have been familiar with eating nuts, but to see a chestnut tree that would grow that tall and to provide those nuts as well would have been unusual.
How tall?
They were a canopy tree, so they dominated the canopy from Georgia to Maine. So they could easily get up into that 80-foot range without much of a problem.
And what
they're often, in fact, a friend of mine gave me his grand aunt's book that she labeled the tree the monarch of the Appalachians, which I thought was a beautiful way to think of the tree.
That's a great title.
Yeah,
So, were they the dominant tree through the Appalachians
absolutely. Yep.
300 years ago?
Yeah, 25% of the forest is made up of that tree.
And there were so many we knew they could never go away, like the passenger pigeons and the
Yeah,
bison.
absolutely. It was cradle to grave. I mean, you really relied on it. To this day, you can find homes that are made of chestnut, the entire home. They'll take it down, and a lot of times the boards are rough sawn. And so you can take it all to a sawmill today. Rough sawn means that, was the dimensions were really 2 inches by 4 inches, not what you get at at a Home Depot or a Lowe's today.
Right.
We could take it to a sawmill and get it to dimensional lumber today, and it would be just as good as it was when it was sawn into that house hundreds of years ago. So it's an incredible wood in terms of its long lasting properties. It has a real resistance to rot. So that they would have been really impressed with its ability to sustain itself in the environment as well. So I think, the early Europeans would have been very impressed with it. And, Native Americans were using it for all kinds of different reasons. The food source was really very important.
So, what happened to it?
So what happened was sometime in 1904, we noticed a blight. They believe it came in from Asia, probably on a Japanese chestnut tree or a Chinese chestnut tree. When you look at a Chinese chestnut, it's much larger than an American chestnut. And so that Chinese chestnut is very attractive to orchard growers because you can grow, a lot more trees, or excuse me, a lot more chestnuts on a lot fewer acres, with trees that are really, if you think about an orchard tree, they're not as tall. They grow sort of closer to the ground and in a form that's a little more spread out. So it's easier to collect those nuts. Well, the American chestnut's not that form. And so people brought in the Chinese because they thought they could, make more money growing an agricultural crop that way. Brought in a blight, which is a kind of a spore-based fungal disease that came in from the Asian species along with it. Even the Chinese tree is susceptible to these blights as well. But that blight started infecting the American trees. And as soon as it got unleashed, within about 50 years, the tree was gone from the landscape. And so to this day, you can find the roots. The tree is killed, but the roots remain, which is a pretty incredible story. So it's a tree that can endure in the landscape for generations without being able to reach the canopy. But that's what we're trying to do, is to figure out a way where we could take that resistance, that endurance that the chestnut has, so it can beat the blight and live with the blight and survive and endure in the landscape, so that we can bring it back to have that ecological role that we know that it can play. Scott, I don't know that American chestnut will ever, be that 25% tree in the canopy ever again. But we certainly can get it into that canopy. And that's what we're trying to do at the American Chestnut Foundation. We don't know what's going to happen with any of these trees because, who could have predicted 10 years ago that the ash would be susceptible to the emerald ash borer and we would have lost it from the landscape. So our job at the American Chestnut Foundation is to figure out how we can build a tree that has this kind of endurance and transfer the knowledge that we're gaining to help other species sustain themselves on the landscape as well. And that's one of the things that we're really excited about, is transferring the knowledge that we're gaining to other partners in this pursuit of really creating a sustainable, long-lasting American forest.
And so, in order for these roots that are there, or the ones that you're going to transplant, to succeed, do we have to clear some of the land so that they're able to get a foothold and compete?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. So it's a really, really interesting tree. So a lot of the work that we're doing requires orchard plantings, where we're really clearing, really trying to make sure the site conditions are perfect for what we're trying to achieve, because we're doing progeny testing, a lot of scientific research, where we're really trying to understand what's happening within the genetics of the tree, so that we can produce the best crossbreeds over time to produce that enduring tree that's going to last on the landscape.
Were we at the infancy of trying to bring this tree back then?
I'm sorry, you broke up just a little bit, Scott.
Okay. Are we at the infancy of trying to bring this tree back? I mean, it sounds like
No, we've been working on it for a very long time. This is the kind of process. Trees are a particularly challenging plant to work on for a number of different reasons. The genetics of the plant are incredibly complicated. There's lots of different ways that the genes repeat themselves cycles and combine in ways that we don't completely understand just yet. The breeding cycle, as we talked about, is much longer, so that, to be able to collect pollen from a tree can take a significant amount of time, and we need that pollen to be able to test its success for that next generation. So we're always iterating. Every year we're putting new trees on the landscape to keep getting better and continuous improvement every time we're planting a new generation. But to get that generation to produce pollen takes 7 years before we can test its performance with the next generation. So it's a
Okay.
long cycle in terms of what we do with trees, and it just takes us a while to get there. So is it in its infancy? In some ways, yes. And in some ways, we've been at it for a very, very long time.
Okay. Are there pockets of wild chestnut trees
Yes.
that the public can go see? Where are those? Tell us where
Yeah.
we can.
If you go on to the American Chestnut Foundation's website, tacf.org,
We'll throw that up here on the screen.
you can find a resource on there where you can actually go out and locate chestnuts in your area. You can work with a local chapter, and you can actually go out, and there'll be folks who will actually take you out into the woods and show you where you can find them, or actually go out and find some of the orchards that we have around the country as well. So there's lots of different opportunities to go out and visit chestnuts, and lots of places where you wouldn't expect them. If you want to someday, Scott, if you're ever in Washington, D.C., where I live, I'd be happy to take you to see one that's right on the Capitol grounds, right next to the Capitol on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C.
Hopefully, we won't put a new ballroom there, so we'll see how that goes.
No, we'll put it. We'll just fill it with chestnuts. It'll work. We'll get it done.
I will take you up on that, by the way. One of the joys of doing this podcast are these kind of offers. And I try to take people up in January. I'm going up to an Indian reservation outside of Missoula and spending 3 days studying long-eared owls that came from this similar offer. I do get to
Wow.
DC.
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott. I'll let you in on a little secret. I am one of the best Washington Monument at night tour guides you'll ever find. So you'll take me up on that, and we will have a great time. I
will
can't
do that.
guarantee any owls, but I could probably guarantee you a bald eagle if we spent the time looking for one.
You know what? I just had one just before we went on the air fly across our backyard over the
That's
lake.
awesome.
And we used to spend a lot of time. We still have a home in DC. My son went to Georgetown Law.
Wonderful.
And so we don't get up there nearly as much as we used to, but I will definitely take you up on that, because really that's how I get paid for what I'm doing, is the interesting people I meet and the interesting places that I get to go. So now you are fairly recently the president and CEO, right? I mean,
Yeah.
September?
Yeah, I just came on just a little bit over a month now. Absolutely.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit take us back to your childhood. Were you a naturalist? Were you a forest guy? Were you a herp guy?
I was
how
actually,
do
it's
you
funny.
go from
I was a theater guy and a musician, but in all reality, what I really was an environmentalist. I grew up in Western New York, on the shore of Lake Erie, and the lake was really important to me. I kind of grew up at a time where, it was pretty polluted, and watched it recover and watched people really care and try to do something and change it. And so I was able to attend the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry at Syracuse University, which has the Guinness World Record for the longest university title in the world, but also has a wonderful program. If you want to study the environment, it's one of the best places in the world to do it. And I was able to study
And what do you
there.
have to do to get in? You have to be able to state the name of the school.
That's right. Yeah. If you could spell it.
Yeah. Skip the
You get all the
SAT.
letters right.
Skip the SAT. We don't need to see your transcript, but
You got to know the Latin name.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to study, because you really get an in-depth understanding of the environment in ways like we were talking about, that connection, the understanding of ecology, that all of us are connected and how we're connected. And that's really how I came into forestry too, is that I was so interested in water that I really started to learn the connection to forests. And so through dumb luck, we were trying to get Al Gore to come to speak to the university. And in the last communication after he turned us down, I said, if you're ever looking for an intern, here's my resume. And for whatever reason, they needed an intern, Scott, and they called me. And I went and I was an intern in the White House for about 6 months, and really learned to understand the role of forests and policy and understanding that world. And so the rest is kind of history. I got really interested in how that intersection happens and how policy, forests, water, how it's all connected to things like the birds that we were talking about, or the farms that we care about, and the production of all the things that we need every day. I mean, this is the funny thing about, it's so interesting to me because if you had met me, I was actually in high school, I was voted most likely to save the world, which is really sort of both funny
Let me
and
tell
very
you, where I went
humbling.
to high school, we didn't have that category. We had best hair, best eyes.
Well, I clearly want best hair as well.
Yes, yeah. No, we didn't have any aspirational win.
Well, we had that one, and I was very fortunate to win it as part of a couple, actually. But anyway, I was very graciously awarded that by my fellow student colleagues there. And what's funny about it was, I was really committed to the environment, and then, really trying to understand forestry and understanding that, managing forests and, using timber as a resource was really important. Learning that, you can, if you're smart and we use our resources sustainably, we can do things like sequester carbon in new and innovative ways. After some work with the professional society that represents foresters throughout the country, I worked for another organization called the U.S. Endowment for Forestry and Communities. And I would love to put you in touch with a gentleman there named Peter Stangl, who
Yes.
works on conservation issues, but is just a fantastic birder. You would love, and he's in South Carolina, so
Oh,
he's
terrific.
in Aiken, over in Aiken. So I'll make sure we connect you.
Less than
But
an hour away.
yeah, well, perfect. And so, was able to go there and work on innovation in the forest sector when we were able to do things like through a community of again, community, right? Bunch of different organizations coming together. We were able to work to create a new standard in building in the United States that allows us to build above 6 stories in wood construction. So we can go up to 18 stories now with wood-based construction, which by building its new kinds of wood, it's called cross-laminated timber, incredibly strong, lightweight, but sequesters a lot of carbon. Just an incredible new building technology. But, if we're doing sustainability right, we're able to do those kinds of projects going forward. I was able to work on things like trying to reduce the environmental footprint of concrete by adding a tiny amount of wood product to concrete to reduce its carbon emissions. The world's really exciting if we think about different ways that we can use natural products. And when we use natural products, I mean, at least in a capitalist country like the United States, when we value those products, we value the places that they come from, and we put more energy and more resources into conserving and protecting them over the long term. And so that's what, that's the kind of the cycle that I'm so excited about all of this, is it's all connected, that we can think about ways that, an effort like trying to bring the chestnut back to the landscape really connects to things like trying to make sure that the habitat is there for whatever species that we're interested in, because obviously the chestnut's going to, I mean, let me just one real quick one for you.
Go ahead.
Reclamation.
We don't
So
have a time limit.
I just know I talk Alaska, but
We don't have a
reclamation
time
on
limit.
mine sites is a really exciting opportunity, right? Because if you think about mines that have been really hit hard in Appalachia, those lands really need a restoration opportunity. And so chestnut's a really interesting species, because if we planted it in a mixed forest environment where we're putting it in with oaks and pines and a few other species, chestnut will do pretty well for the first few years. And sometimes the blight will come in and it'll, like we talked about, it's not going to kill every tree, but it's going to kill a few of them. They're not all going to survive. But the really interesting thing is, in those early years when they start producing burrs and leaf litter and those kinds of things, it's actually incredible for building soil. The burr is the covering that covers the nut itself. It's a sort of a spiky ball that covers, it looks like an incredibly spiky tennis ball. And I recommend wearing gloves if you pick one up. But inside of that burr, you can open it up and you'll find chestnuts inside of there, those little brown nuts that you might be familiar with. And those burrs, when they decompose, really add a lot to the soil. Chestnut is a nitrogen fixer as well. So, it's got a really interesting opportunity, and it loves rocky soil. So it's really a great pioneer species in something like a landscape like a mine reclamation site, because it also self-thins, right? So after 7 to 10 years, when the blight comes in and starts to hit some of those trees, some of them will die, but we don't have to thin them out. They'll die naturally, and then it'll release some oaks, some of the chestnuts, and some of the other trees will get the opportunity to get more light and grow up into the canopy. And so, it's a really interesting species that we're not able to bring it back to the vision that we want to on the landscape. There are still opportunities to use it in ways that are going to benefit nature. We're going to learn from the work that we're doing, right? Because we're going to be able to find trees that are working. We're going to be able to improve what we're doing, because every single generation of trees, we're finding ways to make those improvements. It's a continuous improvement program that eventually is going to produce that enduring chestnut that you and I, or our grandkids, are going to be able to go out and visit in the forest and say, hey, there are people who cared about this tree, and that's why it's here in the landscape today. And I think that that is something that is going to happen within, the next 30 years, is that is realistic to think about what's possible. Because like we talked about earlier with the loblolly pine research that was done with a cooperative relationship at the North Carolina State University with a bunch of other universities, with private timber companies, with private landowners, all working together to improve the genetics of loblolly pine. They were able to increase its resilience on the landscape in many, many ways, and do things like increase its ability to produce volume on the same acres at about 50%. Incredible gains from technology called recombinant genomic selection that has been used in the agricultural industry for years and years. It's how we can do things like, and I know not everyone's excited about this, but it's how we can produce a chicken today in about 3 months that we can bring to market. I mean, that is an incredible achievement. I mean, again, and some people might find that horrific. I'm not going to judge it, but at the same time, it's an incredible achievement, because that's not genetic engineering. That's genetic selection, with breeders providing years and years of data to the federal government, to other entities, everyone working together to produce models that said, this chicken breeding with this chicken is going to get us a better result. This chicken with this chicken. And we're doing the same thing with chestnut, trying to find the best ones over time, until we produce one that will be able to endure on the landscape. And we can do that with pine. We can do it with chestnut. We can do it with any of the trees that are in jeopardy and at risk in our forest. And it's something that, frankly, we should be doing for much more than chestnut. And I think it's something that, our community is going to be arguing for in the future as well, asking our government to make a little bit more investment in things like other species that maybe don't have the attention and the care that our community has brought to the chestnut. Because this is the incredible thing. When you mentioned that I just started at the American Chestnut Foundation, it's our volunteers and donors that have kept this going. We get very little government money to make this happen. It's an almost all private donations that's making this happen. And I'm so proud of our community for doing that, simply because it's hope that's making this go. It's not even a commercial forest product, because no one needs it or wants it to build lumber. We've got plenty of species. We don't need chestnut. That's not why people are doing this. They're doing it because they want to see it on the landscape. Is there anything more hopeful and more wonderful than a group of people coming together, not only using their time and their talent for citizen science, but opening their checkbooks and making it go with their own dollars? That is an American conservation story that I think we can all be incredibly proud of. We talk about hope, Scott. That is hope. That is hope in a
I think that's
mission.
fantastic. And
So
that's what
proud.
we have to give, right? Time, talent, or treasure.
That's it.
The
That's
three
all we
T's.
have.
That's if you're lucky, you've got a couple of them, but most of us just have one. And so I think it's a spectacular thing. So tell me, what is it? Well, first of all, I want to ask you, in all of the work that you're doing, the research and the science and the genetics and everything involved in this, is there hope to develop a blight resistant or blight proof chestnut tree? Is that a reasonable hope?
Yes, blight resistant, absolutely. Right now, if you look at Chinese chestnut, so native to China chestnut, it is blight resistant. So we believe the genetics are there. And so what we're doing is we're trying to work through and find those genetics, both in American chestnut and in Chinese chestnut, and we're really working with very few Chinese genes, mostly American genes, and we're looking for because it's not it's not just one gene that is going to give us the blight resistance. There are multiple things that are going on in a tree to make that
You
happen,
mean
right?
it's not
Because
easy?
no, it's incredibly complicated. I mean, if you think about what it takes, you're getting this fungal infection inside of a tree, and it's got to figure out how to wall off that infection, how to kill it, how to back off on it, how to put some sort of resistance around it. There's a lot going on in there, and unfortunately, chestnut's not very good at that process. If it was oak's really great at trying to compartmentalize infections, and it does a very good job on it. If we could find some way to transfer that ability from an oak to a chestnut, that would be very interesting. And we've looked at genetic ways to do some of this work. There's some incredible work that was done at SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry, looking at ways that we could find some genetic modifications that could be done through engineering, all through approved scientific methods, that is overseen by FDA and EPA and all the appropriate authorities. But they were looking at ways, could we find a way to insert different genes to see if there was a way we could produce an enduring chestnut? And they've had some success. It's not complete, but even one gene insertion doesn't give us everything that we need. I wish them a lot of luck. I hope that they find ultimate success with that. But at the end of the day, what we learn from a lot of these projects is that resistance comes from multiple genes and multiple processes. And it's not just the genetics too. Site selection really matters too, Scott. So I could take you, if we've got the time when you come to visit in Maryland, I can take you to a site that's really close to Sugarloaf Mountain, which is a
Okay.
really pretty area in Maryland. And near that site, I can show you an area that has chestnut trees that are 30, 40, 50 feet in the air, beautiful species, gorgeous, gorgeous chestnut orchard. Trees, same progeny, not that far away, just runty looking, terrible stuff. Why? I look at it and it's part of its site selection. I look at this and I go, this site has much rockier soil. I look at this one, it's got a little bit more wetness factor, and that wetness probably does something that somehow affects the ability of the chestnut to thrive. We know, for example, there are issues with another. See, the thing is, we at the American Chestnut Foundation, we don't like just a challenge. We like a really, really hard challenge, because in addition to chestnut blight, we have another problem, which is Phytophthora. So in the South, we have a root rot disease that also impacts chestnut, and it's actually spreading quickly north as well. So it's already into Maryland. But so in the South, we also have to find resistance to Phytophthora so that we can breed a chestnut that will endure in the South as well. So it's a big challenge, but we're making the progress. That's the incredible thing.
So
That's what we're
you
seeing.
don't anticipate being bored in the next few weeks.
No, and this is the nice, like you said, I just started, but in many ways, as long as I'm making progress, I think this could be a lifelong employment opportunity for myself. My
Well,
family's looking forward to the challenge.
well, let's be optimistic about that. Where in the vision or mission, where do you see chestnuts in a half century?
I hope that the American Chestnut Foundation is out of business. That we've created a chestnut that endures on the landscape and can survive on its own, and it will not need the support of citizen scientists who care as much as we do right now about this tree. I think that in 50 years, we will absolutely meet that goal. I really do believe that where we are in our cycles, where we are in our understanding, 30 years is realistic. I like to think of Scott, do you know what a flywheel is? A flywheel is part of an engine that, what'll happen is you need that little bit of inertia to get it kicking off one
Yes.
bit. And then eventually, right, as you put more weight into it, that wheel will turn on its own and eventually start spinning pretty well. And so I kind of think about our work as a flywheel, where we've got a bunch of different work that we're doing. So we've got our advanced breeding program that we were talking about, that RGS, Recombinant selection that we're doing, that's based on some of those agricultural models, where we're really trying to do advanced breeding, where we're producing the absolute best genetically produced chestnut, not engineered, genetically produced chestnut that we can, based on traits that we see in advance by looking at the genetics before we plant the tree. So using advanced science in traditional breeding, but getting a much better result faster through that technology. So that's one core of our program, is that advanced breeding technology. We also have a biotechnology program where we're having a science set of advisors that help us look at some of the very best biotechnology that's out there. Whether it's something like, you probably don't know this, but chestnut doesn't graft very well. So a lot of if you went to a walnut plantation in, you know who, Senator Lugar from Indiana years ago, you may remember Senator Lugar. He
Uh-huh.
had a black walnut plantation that was American black walnut trunks, and grafted onto the black walnut were English walnut branches, so that he could produce walnuts for eating. So you had English walnuts for eating that were growing on black walnut trunks because it grafted really easily. Chestnuts don't graft very well. So we've got to figure out how to graft better. Then we're also looking at things like, could we do things with CRISPR that would make a difference? Are there ways that we can look at gene editing that might make a way that we could figure out a way to produce some advanced technology? So we're not closing the door on doing genetic modification to these trees as well. If that's a solution that's going to make sense, we're going to take a look at it, because our objective is to get an enduring chestnut on the landscape. So we're looking at those questions. We're looking at things like, how can we do a better job of cloning this tree? We can't clone it. So even, like the banana that is a clone, which is problematic, which is a clone that's produced all over the world, we can't really clone very well chestnut. So there's lots of work that we need to do on that basic science side of things that we're doing at the Chestnut Foundation. And so we're funding that kind of work. And so then, in addition to all that, we have this unbelievable network of chapters and volunteers that are out there every year. It's unbelievable. Every summer in June, they're out there, and this is another time you ought to come out and see the flowers, because, it looks like it's snowing in June. They're so spectacular. All the candles that come off of the chestnut trees. I'm forgetting the scientific name of that flower, but anyway, it's the female flowers at the base, the male flowers are throughout it, and that's how you get the bulb at the bottom of that apparatus. But anyway, that when in June, when that flowers, it's absolutely spectacular. They're out there every June collecting that pollen, so that we can actually have controlled trials of pollination of our trees, so that we really can understand the genetics better. In the fall, they're out there collecting burrs. Orchard ladders terrify me, but our volunteers will climb on these orchard ladders and get way up into the canopy picking burrs, which, like I told you, you got to talk about gloves that you need. You actually need welder's gloves to handle those burrs, because they are that thick and nasty on your hands. And even then, sometimes they'll get poked through the gloves. And then you got to
Well,
open them
I'll
up to
bring
get the
mine
guts.
with me when we get together, so you
There
can
you go.
so I can pick
Absolutely.
up a
Yeah.
couple of birds.
We'll get it done. But anyway, so that's who we've got. We've got this incredible scientific program. We've got this advanced look at what we're trying to do in terms of our studies. We've got this incredible group of citizen scientists that are out there doing the work every day. We've got a team and our national office staff that is so dedicated to bringing this tree back. The passion is almost overwhelming for me. It's almost hard to manage, because they're so passionate about bringing this tree back that sometimes, it's you got to remember how hard it is to do it. They're an incredible group of human beings that I get to work with. We've got a board of directors that is absolutely committed to, advancing the organization and getting the funding in the door that we need to make it happen. And Scott, I've been talking to a little bit to members of Congress, a little bit to folks at the USDA Forest Service. People are excited about our mission. They want to be part of success. They want to be part of the American Chestnut Foundation and what we're trying to bring back. And, we're trying to bring every partner in we can. We want to work with anyone who's willing to help try to bring this tree back, and help to try to bring any of these trees back that are subject to some of these diseases that we're all experiencing. Chestnut was just the first, disastrous situation we had with trees, but it certainly won't be the last, and certainly hasn't been.
Well, as we're drawing to a close, first of all, congratulations on your new gig.
Oh, thank you.
I wish they could have found someone that was enthusiastic about this,
I
but
know.
you know what? I guess they have to take what they can find.
Exactly.
So, and I'm excited. First of all, I've learned quite a bit that I did not know an hour ago. So for that, I thank you, and I'm hoping to learn more. And I'm hoping we do get to spend some time together. And the offer's the other way, by the way. If you make your way down to South Carolina, if you're out doing some of your field work, I'd love to host you here at the house.
But I would love to do that. I do get down there quite a bit, and my
Okay.
daughter goes to the University of Georgia, so we'll
Oh,
make it happen.
fantastic. Well, then, we'll find a way to get together. I will look
And
forward
your
to that.
son too. I mean, I have a 16-year-old son as well. It sounds like your son went to Georgetown Law already, so maybe your son's
Yeah.
a little bit older than mine. But I'd love
Yeah, he's
to bring him
41.
out.
Absolutely. And he does get up to DC, and he was actually the impetus for starting the podcast.
Oh, awesome. Well, we can meet him where he is too. I can find you.
Yeah,
Listen,
we can
seriously,
do
your
that.
audience, anybody who wants to find a chestnut, I can find him a chestnut somewhere on the
Perfect.
East
Well,
Coast. On the East Coast.
on the East Coast. I will look forward to that. I'm going to throw my email up right now. If any of you watching or listening have a question for me, if you're just listening, scott@naturallyscott.com. If you're watching, it's up on the screen. Send me a note. If you've got something you want to ask Michael, send it to me and I'll get it off to him. And Michael, now I'd like to ask you, if you would, to recommend a book to the audience, a nature-based book that you think they would have an interest in reading.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to give him my email as well, Scott, it's michael.goergen@tacf.org. But
Yeah, I'll throw that up on the screen as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anybody wants to reach out, we're happy to chat.
Okay.
The book I wanted to recommend is a book called Nature's Metropolis: Chicago and the Great West by an author named William Cronin. And the reason that I want to recommend it sounds a little bit like it's very academic. I would admit that. It's a lot about natural history told. It's environmental history. He's an environmental historian. And what Cronin does is he talks about the growth of the city of Chicago, but he does it through a lens of trying to understand how nature built the city and what nature had to do to impact the city and how things really grew because of things like the stock market. And in fact, when I say the stock market, what's really interesting is he talks about the commodities market and the growth of the commodities market. For the first time in my life, I understood the commodities market when I read this book. It's fantastic.
So you're one time ahead of me, by the way.
Well, Cronin's book is the one to do. There's a ton more I'd be happy to tell you guys about. There's, one of the funniest books I've ever read is the book about Teddy Roosevelt taking a trip down the Amazon. That's a great one too. I forget what it's called.
What?
River of Doubt or something.
I have absolutely fallen in love with Teddy Roosevelt.
He's a character.
There's shoot. Let me see if I can see it up here quickly. Doggone it. I'll throw a picture of it up here. Oh, here it is. David Gessner wrote a book called Leave It As It Is,
Okay.
which is one of Teddy's famous quotes. And he wrote an entire book about that. Roosevelt's trips out to Yellowstone and Yosemite and the West and whatnot. And it's a great book. And there are reasons to get upset with Teddy Roosevelt, as there are with every single person throughout the history
including
of
myself.
mankind.
I've made plenty of mistakes myself, Scott.
Excluding you. But all the rest of us have been burdened with faults. And you just read about some of the efforts that people have made, and whatever else you might think. And I think Teddy Roosevelt is one of our great presidents. But I think that from a conservation point of view, granted, he hunted and he did all kinds of stuff, and we can look at it through the perspective of time. But my God, he did a lot to save some of the things that we have now.
He did.
And there you go. Hey,
in fact, just real quick on Roosevelt, he
Sure.
he was incredibly important to forestry, was best friends with Gifford Pinchot, who was the guy who wound up creating the USDA Forest Service. He was basically the Rahm Emanuel to Barack Obama as Gifford Pinchot was to Teddy Roosevelt, which is just sort of interesting. There are two presidents that are honorary members of the Society of American Foresters, which is a group I used to work with as well. And they are Teddy Roosevelt was the first one, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the second one. So yeah, conservation was very important to both of the Roosevelts.
You know what? That would be the great title for a book, Cousins in Conservation.
Absolutely, it would be. That would be fun. But we should write it, Scott. We'll get it done.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we both are filled with so much free time. I think, I was interviewing, I'm embarrassed. I can't remember yesterday who I was talking to, but at the end he goes, you know what? This is a book that you and I should write. Let's talk about it when we get off the recording. I'm thinking, oh my God, yes, it is. It's a great idea for a book, but I'm going to be 147 before I finish the ones I've started now. You talked about writing. I've written in the last 10 years, I've published 50 something books.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I write a lot of books. I write fiction and nonfiction. It can
Oh,
be
wow.
argued that some of my nonfiction leans toward fiction, but nonetheless, and I love writing. But every time, like that would actually make a great book,
It
Cousins
would.
of Conservation with the two Roosevelts. That's a project I could latch on to, but at the expense of what other project?
Exactly.
Right. So you and I will figure out, let's save the chestnuts. I'll do a couple more podcasts and then we'll write the book.
You know what? Sometimes though, I tell you, I wrote an essay just the other day because a friend, so bizarre. A friend of mine is a musician, and I wrote an essay about how his style is leadership, servant leadership, by being, because being in a music band, it has a different kind of leadership and a different style. And so we're kind of making it on leadership on the pentatonic scale. We've been talking about this for years. I finally wrote the article and submitted it. So maybe it's just a short article, but we'll write it.
Okay, maybe that's it. Better than a book. I could do an article. I could
There
set
we
aside.
go.
Well, what instrument did you play?
I love to play poorly guitar, but I played bass guitar quite a bit in my youth, and also tuba, and I was a singer as well.
Okay, what kind of music was the band?
Well, my rock band was mostly sort of that sort of alternative '90s stuff that everybody loved. And the tuba stuff was a classic Sousa marching band. A little secret: at one point in time, I was the drum major.
You whispered it, but my producer's going to turn the volume up on that particular note. We're going to make sure to get there. I got to play a little bit with an Oompa band in, God, where was I? In Scotland.
Oh,
so
wow.
I play harmonica, and I was in a blues band for about 5 years, and my wife and I were on vacation with some good friends. Same friends we went to Africa with last year, and the same friends we're going to the Galapagos with next year. We travel a lot with them. And there's a thing called the Fringe in Edinburgh,
Yeah.
Scotland.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, absolutely. A Fringe Festival. Yeah.
It's the most magnificent thing. It's 30 days of thousands of events. Anyway, somehow or another, I wound up playing harmonica with a German Oompa band up on stage and playing away. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not even a very good blues harmonica player. And now I'm struggling and pretending that I can do this. But it was a blast. It was
I
so
love
much
it.
fun. I had the best time doing this. Okay.
Well,
Michael,
I'll tell you that the musician that I used is a friend of mine, Derek Trucks. So we'll have to talk about that sometime, because if you're a blues
one of the
harmonica
three
fan,
greatest
you know
guitar
my friend
players of
Derek.
all time. So I will tell you this, not that Derek would remember or give a crap, but I used to go on something called the Blues Cruise. It leaves every January out of Fort Lauderdale, and it's a cruise that for a week, all they do is blues.
To New
And
Orleans, right?
pardon?
To New Orleans, right? Does it go to New Orleans?
No. It goes
Yeah.
through the Caribbean. It takes a different
Okay.
route every year. And my wife and I went about 7 years in a row, which shows what kind of wife she is, because she hates the blues.
Awesome.
But I had somehow or another worked it out that I could sneak literally on stage, not backstage, but on stage. And one year they got Tedeschi Trucks
Oh,
to
wow.
come out and be the headline. Now, what the headline did, like it was Buddy Guy one year, they would come out, they would play once, and then they'd fly away and go do whatever else they do. I actually got to be on stage, leaning against the speaker, 3 or 4 feet away from Derek while he played. Now,
Wow.
he's not telling this story in his podcast.
Yeah.
There was some putt leaning against the speaker while we were up there for 3 hours. But for me to be 3 feet away, and by the way, the other two, Chris Kane and BB King, were, and I don't know if you ever heard of him, a guy named Gino Matteo. One of them, he just passed away a couple months ago, but those were my guitar players. But Derek Truck is just...
Well, he and Susan are big time conservationists. They've got a property in Georgia that's spectacular. I mean, talking about bald eagles, I mean, they literally have a nesting bald eagle on the property. It's spectacular. So maybe sometime we should connect on that too.
That's a cool thing to be able to say. If you're at a cocktail party and, I was out looking at our bald eagle nest in the backyard yesterday. Well, shit, that's it. You're done.
We should talk about it, because they also they experiment. I mean, they're incredible conservationists. They experimented with putting nanocellulose into a concrete project they had on their property. I mean, just incredible human beings. So
we'll talk about them when we get together. I will look forward.
All right, I look forward to it. Scott,
okay,
this has been a pleasure. I hope everybody we can talk about more, and we'll get you out in the field, and we'll look at some chestnuts together, and we'll get some video of it.
I'm going to look forward to that. And Michael, I close every show. First of all, I want to say thank you to you for joining us. I really do appreciate it. I never take it for granted. I imagine you have 1 or 2 things to do your second month on the job. And I wrap up every show the same thing, which is whatever it takes, get outside, get out in nature and do some stuff. I mean, read about it is great and that's terrific, but get out there and do it. And when you're out there, always stay safe and stay curious. Michael, thank you again, man.
Thank you. Take care, Scott.
Hello, and welcome to the 34th episode of Field Notes. I'm your host, Scott Harris, and I got a fun one for you today. I'm going to talk about Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Now, my goal is to do eventually one Field Notes on each of the 63 national parks, and today we're going to get this one done, so I'm looking forward to it. This park is number 21, was established in 1934. It's roughly 500,000 acres. It's 800 square miles, and about half of the park is in North Carolina, and the other half is in Tennessee. This was the homelands of the eastern band of the Cherokee Indians originally, and now, and by the way, those were the ones that survived, or the ones that survived or avoided the Trail of Tears back in the 1830s. Some of them did, and these were the ones that were able to stay and not get destroyed on that Trail of Tears. And now the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and the National Park Service have an official cooperative agreement. They work closely together on these lands, respecting the history of the indigenous tribe and of everybody else, trying to make it a great place to visit. And in some ways it must be, because it is the most visited national park of the 63 national parks, 12 million visits per year. There's no entry fee. Now, that number's a little warped, and I'll share why. The Newfound Gap Road, which is U.S. Highway 441, drives 33 miles through the park. From the north, you come in from Gatlinburg, Tennessee. From the south, Cherokee, North Carolina. And so what happens is you have this major highway, and everybody that goes through it, whether they're stopping or even slowing down or going to turnouts or camping or visitor centers or whatever, or just frankly chewing up 33 miles in a half hour, are counted as visitors. But for those that don't stop, maybe they should consider it. There are 19,000 known species of flora and fauna scattered throughout the park, and more are expected. There are just discoveries that haven't been made yet, or some initial discoveries that haven't been fully fleshed out. The national park is known as the salamander capital of the world. There are 30 species of salamanders. Salamanders breathe through their skin. They're pretty cool. And by the way, if you want to know more about those, go back and look at Field Notes number 28, following the Susie Spickle podcast. And that whole Field Notes is on salamanders, and we discuss this at length, so I won't go too far into it today. There are 1,500 flowering plants in this national park, hundreds of different spring plants that have wildflowers. So if you come by in the spring, it's just beautiful. The highest point in the park is Klingman's Dome, 6,643 feet. And by the way, I'm still amazed that they can measure those things that exact, but it's kind of cool. 20 to 25% of the forests located throughout the park are old growth forests. And old growth forest is a term you hear a lot, but the definition of that is it predates Europeans. So these are forests that were here before Western Europeans showed up, and that is what is considered old growth. There are thousands of miles of streams throughout the park, and you can go and hike all of these and see all these different places. I've spent some time up there. It is absolutely spectacular. The American black bear is very commonly seen up there. Cades Cove is a spot inside the park where you can do a drive. Now, sunrise and sunset, dusk and dawn, those are the best times. It can get crowded, I will tell you that. There's not really convenient places to pull over, and you can get stacked up behind cars. And, if there's a bear that shows up and you're 20 cars back and the first car stops and is inconsiderate enough to stay for a while, you're never going to get up there. But I have been on the road where there aren't a lot of people, and it is magnificent. But you get up there in the summer with crowds and whatnot, it can be a bit of a challenge. But Cades Cove inside that park is one of the best places in the country to see American black bear. You can see elk. Now, this is a cool thing. Outside of Bryson City is where you want to look. And let me see if I can pronounce this right. The Oconaluftee Visitor Center. And I've been there quite a few times to photograph elk, and it is a gorgeous place. Big open field, plenty of places to pull off. The field is protected. You're not supposed to go out there and bother the elk, but you can see the elk there year round. And oftentimes you can see 50 to 100 elk out there, and it is a pretty cool thing. Other megafauna that you might be able to see out there: white-tailed deer, wild boar, which were introduced, but nonetheless are there, coyotes, bobcats. The ones that are gone, gray wolves, eastern cougars, that's a sad deal. For you birders out there, and I am one, 240 species of birds recorded in the park. 120 of them breed there regularly. You can see wild turkeys, pileated woodpeckers, northern saw-whet owls, barred owls, great horned owls, red-tailed hawks, broad-winged hawks, sharp-shinned coopers. Peregrines have been reintroduced and are thriving. Ruffed grouse. For your warblers, you've got the black-throated blue, hooded, worm-eating, ovenbird. There's some pretty cool things. Bottom line is, if you get a chance, get up there and visit it, and don't just drive through, man. Get out and spend some time, see some animals, see some plants, see some streams, and have a blast. As always, thank you for listening to us. I really do appreciate it. If you're on one of the podcast formats, platforms, Spotify or Apple or whatever, I really do enjoy knowing that you guys are out there. If you happen to be watching us on YouTube, do me a favor and subscribe. The more people that subscribe, the more YouTube pushes this out, the more our message gets out, and the more guests we can invite. And so drop a comment, hit like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. As always, when you get a chance, get outside. That's where the best things happen. Enjoy yourself out there. Stay safe and stay curious. Thanks for watching. Enjoy Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Have a terrific day.